Hi, today we're going to do two paintings and you'll be able to use them on greeting cards. We're supplying everything you need and you really don't need any experience beforehand. We're going to be doing a fall maple tree and winter pine trees. Let's go over the equipment that you're going to have. You'll have tape, a pencil and eraser, your palette with all the colors of paint that you could ever want, a paper towel to keep your brushes on, a little piece of scrap watercolor paper to test your colors on, that's really important, 4 brushes, a board to tape your painting paper to, extra paper towel, a Kleenex and more Kleenexes if you need them, a spray bottle with water to dip your brushes in, and then we'll be using later this bleed-proof white for the snow. I want to show you the cards that I bought. This comes with, your kit comes with 2 envelopes, 2 cards, and this is called a deckled edge. Isn't that pretty? You have 2 pieces of paper that you're actually going to paint the images on rather than paint directly on the card front, and you could make a goof. These are goof-proof. So you're doing your painting on the little piece of paper, and then when we're done, you can adhere it with these little adhesive strips onto the front of the card. Or you could save these and frame them. The next watercolor class that we do, I'm planning to do the other 2 seasons. So we'll get the birches in the spring and an oak tree for the summer. I'm also going to give you an extra piece of 4x6 paper. In case you mess up one of these, you can start over on a different piece. Okay, now this challenge for me is going to be that I'm doing these upside down so that you see them the right direction. And the first thing we're going to need to do is tape our papers down. We want 1 vertical and 1 horizontal for our paintings. And just take your tape and tape a scant 1/4 inch. Okay, we don't need a very big border here, but we're going to want a nice clean border on each side. And we're going to be doing wet on wet painting on one of the paintings, so we need to have the edges taped down. This way the paper doesn't buckle up for us while we're painting. It cooperates a lot better. There are 2 things that you'll need to be sharing at your table. One is going to be the spray bottle and the other thing is the roll of tape. And another thing to remember before you get started even doing this much is that you need to have clean hands. If your hands have hand lotion on them, that will repel the paint where you want to paint it on the paper. So just make sure your hands are clean. Okay, we're ready to go. All right, so we're first going to start working on the pine tree picture. And we're going to work on that wet on wet. So the brush you're going to use first to wet the paper, we're going to fully wet the paper, is your 3/4 inch flat brush. So just dip it in the water and stroke it on the paper. We don't want this to be sopping wet, but we want it to be all evenly wet. So go both directions. And while that is setting for a moment, take your number 6 brush, and what we need to do is mix some colors. We're going to do the sky first with a mixture of phthalo blue and ultramarine blue. So, oh, you know what I forgot to do is activate all of my paint. So take the spray bottle and spray all the colors. Might need to do this again later if they start to dry out, but that's why you got a spray bottle. All right, so now some phthalo blue. Bring that out into your palette. And then we want to take a little of the ultramarine blue. And now I need to make that water a little waterier so I can spray some more water in there. Okay, now to test the color, you know, you can test it on your paper. Okay, that's pretty intense, but I am adding it to a wet surface, but I think I would like to wet that down a little bit more. A little bit intense. Let's see what that does to it. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to put this here so I can remember I'm painting upside down. You're streaking it across the sky. Okay, don't do the whole sky with blue. We're going to leave some of it to be purple. And we want to leave the bottom part to be a hill of snow. Okay, so watch, look how cool that is, how the watercolor is just bleeding into the paper. Now clean your brush, and we're going to go into our Diox purple and add a few streaks of that in the white areas. Make the sky really cool. And everyone's will look different. We're not going for identical paintings here. If you get some paint out on the edges, you can take your Kleenex and dab it off. But that's looking really cool, don't you think? Now what we need to do is let that dry for a little while till it just gets to the point of a little bit shiny. And then we're going to do some snowflakes in the background. Now in my image, my painting, you can see these light areas maybe. Mine didn't work very well on this painting, but I'm hoping that today we'll be able to get those to really pop. What we're going to do is use our number 2 round brush, dip it in the clear water, and when that paint is just to the point where it has a wet see, we want it to just be a little bit shiny. I think it's still a little too wet. We're just going to let it set a minute. But maybe we can show you on this sample paper. If I dot that with water, could you see that at all, Dick? Mm-hmm. Try this little spot, because that's been sitting there a little while. The water in my paintbrush repels the paint that's on the paper and makes us snowflake. Some are going to be small, some are going to be large, and that's okay. I'm wondering if we should dry it with a hairdryer a little bit at that point. Oh, that's not bad. And you should just do these randomly around. Don't make them symmetrical. I love that. They're subtle. They're really, that one's a little too watery. I don't want a huge drop on my brush. Great. Okay. Now I want you to, we'll paint the foreground. This is going to be like a hill of snow. It's like a little snow bank that the trees are planted on. Need to have a clean brush again. And we want to wet this area again. It's probably dried out. Just wet that slightly. All right. And now we want to take a little cobalt blue, which is a little lighter blue, And we want a pretty watery mix of cobalt blue. We don't want it to be very dark. Let's check it over here, see if we like it. What we're trying to do is give the effect that it's the snow in winter, you know, in the evening in the winter. And you know how the snow kind of becomes bluish? That's what we're after here. So we just want to lightly take the brush and just make some area of the snow bank, just to give it a little bit of definition. All right, at this point we need to let that paper dry completely. All right, now we're going to work on the maple tree, and what we want to do, I mean, what I think is a good idea with you know, composition on your painting. It's a small greeting card, but you know, don't slam the tree exactly in the middle. Mine is a little close to the middle. We could go off to the side just a little bit, and then it would be a little bit more pleasing. You can sketch first if you feel like you're going to need to. What we're looking for is at least maybe a little sketch for the trunk, just so that you get a feeling of where it's going to be on the page. And that we're going to have a few little branches coming off that we can see. And that's really all the sketching we need to do, so that we have a feeling of what we're up to after. All right. Now we're going to take the round number 6 brush or the 4 brush, whichever you're more comfortable with. Let's try the 4. And it's a little smaller. And we're going to start with yellow and do yellow areas where the leaves are. And what we're trying to do here is just do the leaf mass shapes, not individual leaves. So as you can see in my example, I don't really have individual leaves except the little splatters that are there. We'll do that later, but we're going to do blobs, you know, puddles of yellow around the edges. And then we're going to add some puddles of orange. And then we're going to add some puddles of sienna. And leaving some spaces white, because that's where we need the branches to come through. We want, some of these leaves have fallen, and we want to be able to see some branches through the tree. So we can't make it a solid mass of color, but that's the plan. So the first color that we're going to use is cadmium yellow. And we need to, I think it's good to bring it out onto your palette so that you have it ready to go. We'll have that one. And then the next shade we're going to do, we're going to have to mix. So we'll use some more yellow. We're going to make some orange. And mix just a little bit of red, this cad red. It's a pretty strong color. We want some orange here. Oh, that's cool. All right, need a little waterier than that. All right, so that's ready to go. Our next color that we'll use is this burnt sienna, and I think that's pretty good the way it is. We'll stick a puddle over here. All right. And then we'll just go to that far. So the first thing we're going to do is take some of the yellow and we need to paint, you know, just some organic kind of globby shapes, leaving some spaces. Have it kind of wet. You know, you don't want this to be dry on the page because we're going to be adding color to it, and we want it to blend together. So these are forming the shape of our maple tree here. And everyone's, again, will be different. Every time you do this, it's different. No tree is the same, right? But that gives us the basic shape of the tree. And so the next color we're going to use is our orange. We're going into the center of the tree. So with your orange paint, kind of go into the yellow and then bring it into the center of the tree. Always remember to leave some of the white spots, because see how it's blending together? It's so cool. That's how we'll be able to see the branches in the trunk. All right, that's looking good. Next color will be the burnt sienna, more of a deeper orange. And then again, we go toward the middle. And we can just add it to the yellow or whatever you feel like. You know, if you want more of the deeper color toward the outside of the tree, some lower branches, because it would be more shady down here. It's fun. All right, let's see where we are. If you want to tilt the paper so that they run together more, you can do that. But just as you watch it happen, it's fun. Now in my painting, I used some deeper brown. For the deeper brown color, you can mix the burnt sienna with a little bit of blue, because that makes a deeper shade. So let's take a little ultramarine, just a tad of ultramarine blue, and add it to that. That wasn't quite enough. Let's get a little bit more and see what we get. So we're getting a brownish. It's a shadow color, and that's really nice. Nice shadow color. Try it over here and see if you like it. What that's going to do is we add that in at the bottom of the leaves, and it'll kind of blend in. It'll show that where the sun is not hitting. It's more internal. We don't need a lot of it, just a little bit. Because there's blue in there. As it hits the yellow, it kind of turns green, which is good too, because there are green leaves still on these trees, right? Okay, so that's going to continue to spread, and we need to let that dry, totally dry. So next, we're going to go back to the pine tree picture and work on the trees. We need to find out, oh, look how the snowflakes have kind of spread. That's cool. Let's feel the paint, and mine is not dry, so I'm going to have to stop the camera a minute and get my hair dryer. We're going back to the winter picture now, and we're going to be painting the pine trees. If you look at these trees, you can see that there is some tonal difference. There's several different colors of green in here. These are obviously a lighter green. Started with a lighter green and added more darker green in the centers. So you got two that are in more the foreground, and then three background ones that are very light. Take your larger brush. We're going to mix 3 puddles of green paint. Start in a sap green. Get it going here. That's a pretty nice light color. So that will be the base color of the trees. I'll make another puddle of that, which I'll make darker. Now, these pine trees are a little bit more, depending on what type they are, they might be a little bit more bluish. Another color that we can add is this hooker green. Now that's a dark color that's a little bit more of a bluish tint. That looks nice, doesn't it? like that. And what if we took some of the hooker green alone and to make that a little darker, you know, sometimes I don't really know exactly what colors to add, so we got to experiment. Let's try adding a little of the sepia, a little brown, and see what that does to it. Makes it really dark. We might need that for our contrast. So that's a nice color. Okay, great. Now, we want a really small, some small lines. We have 3 brushes to choose from, and you're welcome to use any of them that you want. I think that this number 6 brush has a pretty nice fine point. The advantage to using a bigger brush is that you can hold more paint, and you don't have to keep dipping it back into your paint as often. But if you feel like you'd have better control with a smaller brush, you can use your 2. That's fine. I think I'll start with this one and see how it goes. Before we begin that though, we want to take whatever brush it is and just make a really small, light line here to show where our, well, let's see, I made my ground. It's not going to be a very tall tree, but where this tree is going to be, here, and then I'm going to have another tree over here kind of hidden partially behind this bank of snow. So I think I'll start with my lightest color, the tip of my brush, just make a very faint line to show just where that trunk is on that tree, and it can be a dotted line. It doesn't have to be solid because we're not trying to, we don't want these both to be the same height at the top of the page, so this is going to be a little shorter over here, the other tree. Okay? Now, take the light green, which is the basic sap green. If we need more, we can get it. I'm going to start at the top and just paint the branches of this tree. Now they're kind of going at a downward slant. They turn up, maybe turn up a little bit at the edges. And don't forget, we want to have some that go directly forward because this tree is not 2-dimensional, it's 3-dimensional. But we're going to add snow, so we don't want this to be a solid triangle of branches. We want there to be a little bit of space in between the branches. We can add, we'll be adding more definition as we go. This will get us started on the tree shape. You can have the branches flip up a little bit at the end. That's kind of cool. Okay. Then let's move over to the other shorter one over here. It is interesting working upside down. Okay, so on this side of the tree, the branches are going to look kind of cut off because we want to try to have them show that they're behind that snowbank. So when I get to this part, I don't want to totally finish them. But on this side, we can have a nice branch and a low branch coming forward. All right, and then what we want to do is take a darker color. It doesn't really matter that this is still wet. I think I'll switch to my smaller brush and go to the bluish green color that we made and see what that does. Because this isn't really the color of most pine trees. They are usually a little bit more blue than that. And see if you like which brush you like better for this. I don't know if this has quite as good of a tip as the bigger brush, so I may switch back. I think I will. I liked that 6 better. But if we have the lighter edges and the deeper center, it makes that center look like it's coming out toward you more. At least that's the idea. Now for this other tree, I don't need to make that the same color. Maybe I'll go to my deep color that I made and try that. See how this goes. Ooh, that's really dark. Maybe that's too dark. I'm gonna blot that up a little bit. And I'm going to mix a little of the dark into the mid-green, just so it's a little different tone, but not quite so dark. Okay. Test it out. Okay. Yeah, that's a little better. There are so many different varieties of fir trees that we could paint, and they're all fun. This is just one way to make a pine tree. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit of that darker mix we just made, the center of this one, just to make sure that it doesn't look like it's hollow. All right, now we need to paint the 3 in the background. Now those are farther away. They're much smaller and they would have to be much lighter. I kind of like this tone of paint, but I want to make it waterier. So I'm going to bring some over here to a new puddle and get it waterier because I want this to be pretty light color. I'll try this over here, see if this is what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think that'll be good. Of course, it's different because it's going against that blue sky. We're going to paint a small one here, another one partially behind this tree, and another one over here partially behind that tree. That's the plan. Okay, so we can first paint a little trunk so we know where we're going. All right. It's good to start. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll start here. So this is simple, just the same type of thing we just did. That is so see-through that it looks purple. We might need to make it a little darker. That's good. So we're using our imaginations today to figure out how to make these trees. I didn't bring any reference photos because we see these all the time. I think we can know what they look like. And one more. All right. All right, now, I think that you can tell that our snow bank doesn't look, I can't really tell that I added any blue to that. It's kind of disappeared. So I think we need to add a little bit more color there to the snow. Use our light blue that we made. Maybe make it a little bit more intense. It was cobalt blue. I just added a little aquamarine to it, which will make it a little bit more intense. And we want to give the bank a little definition. I think what we'll do with that is blend it. Remember how to blend is you take your brush, wash it, so wash it, dab it, and then while that paint is wet, you just go along and kind of scribble, dab, and that brings that paint out as a blended, and then we can take our blue that we mixed up, that light blue, and this isn't wet anymore, so we'll have to blend all this. Dab. I'm going to blend that out. It'll give the snow a little definition of, you know, some undulations. Okay, that has to dry now. And if you ever put anything down you don't like maybe I don't want that quite as much there, you know, give it a little different. You can dab some up with your Kleenex if you want to. Okay, we need to let this dry, and we're going to go back because next we're going to do the snow, and so the trees need to be dry. We'll go back to our maple tree. Next we're going to paint the trunk of the maple tree. To do that we're going to use a diluted raw umber. Tree trunks, you know, we normally think of them as brown, but really when you look outside they're more grayish than they are brown, so we're going to kind of get a little gray feeling, I hope. So let's take some raw umber. And we want it to be quite dilute, and we don't want it to be, can you see that, Dick? We don't want it to be that brown. Mm-hmm. Okay. So to gray that a little, I'm going to add some blue. Take some ultramarine. So I'm going to need a little bit more. Ultramarine blue. See, then it's very gray, but it has a blue tone. I think I'd rather get a little bit more toward the brown than that. So take a little bit more raw umber. All right, now it looks fairly concentrated, and I want to check it to see. I don't want it to be that dark, so I want to add water. I can do that two ways. My water's not very clean anymore. I can spray a little bit. Let's get my spray bottle filled. Stir it up, and we'll try again here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Because we're going to darken one side of this. We don't want this trunk to be really all light. It's going to be partly dark, but you can't start with dark and lighten it up. But you can start with light and make it darker. So we're just painting a trunk here. And remember, we drew a few little lines to show where some branches are coming off the main trunk. You can start those. And this is where, you can use your creativity. They don't need to be all straight lines. It can be kind of gnarly. And then, because we have this dry, we can go ahead and show where those branches would naturally go. Trace them up, try not to paint them where they wouldn't make sense, but bring those branches out. We can have another one coming off here. It would come up through with these branches. They'd split off. There's no right or wrong here. This is just your preference. But, when you get to the fall like we are now, what you actually see are quite a few little branches sticking out of the tops of the maple trees, because the leaves have fallen. So you end up with a few little branches up here. Yeah, you want to just work at it till so it makes sense where these branches are going. And that's really gray. We can add a little bit more brown to this if we want to. See, there has to be a branch that comes up this way. Just play with it and see what you like. Remember that the branches should get thinner as you go further away from the tree. Now that's, I think, quite gray. We can take a little of that sepia and have some brown, and while it's wet, it's fun to watch it blend again and just add some dark in there. Even on those branches, if it's still wet, it will just fill out this into the space that you've painted if you just touch it. I think is very cool. You can leave them lighter if you want to, it's fine. And if you got it too dark and you want to soften it out, we want the center of the tree trunk to look like it's rounded. You can take a little bit of your Kleenex and just dab the center of the trunk, and that will help give the tree some dimension. The other thing you can do is take a dry or just really a damp brush and lift some paint. If that's a thirsty brush, it will lift paint up, and as it'll continue to flow, so you can watch it and see if you need to do it again, if it filled back in and you want it to be lighter in the middle, do it again before it all dries. Oh, I think that's looking pretty good. See any spaces where I don't have any branches? Maybe, I don't know, there might be one there. Let me put one in here a little bit. That's good. All right. Now, another thing we want to do is ground this tree. So it's going to need some ground, and we'll use a light green for that because it's a grassy yard that this beautiful tree is in. We'll just take some of that sap green. That's a nice grass green color. And it doesn't need to be real dark. We're not trying to be really careful. You know, we're trying to be kind of loose with this painting. So just take your brush, and I'm not used to working upside down on this. Don't have it just be at the bottom of the tree. You know, it should go up part way. Something like that. And then every tree on a sunny day is going to have a shadow, a cast shadow. And when we look at this, we think, well, maybe this side's a little darker, and we could even emphasize that more. But let's say the cast shadow would be that direction. Remember, we made some shadow color earlier. I need to add a little water to it. It was blue and orange, made a nice light gray shadow color. I can take that, and starting at the base of the tree, just cast the shadow out. Now, all right, we're going to let that one dry for a little while, and we'll go back to the pine trees. Now we want to put some snow. Let's see if this is dry. Oh, I'm going to have to dry that a little bit. So I'm going to use my hairdryer and dry both of my paintings at this point so I can work on this one. We'll do the snow, and then we'll come back and do the leaves. All right, after drying both of these and seeing how things look, I would like to go back and work on the maple tree a little bit. So what I'm going to do is do the shadow over, because that kind of went away. It blended right into the grass. So let's try again. We'll do that cast shadow. I think that'll work better. And the other thing I'd like to do is just add a little bit more. I think this branch needs to be a little wider. Go back into my gray. And just add a little bit, because that's pretty close to the trunk of the tree. I think I'll bring that dark color. Oops, that's the wrong side. That should be on the shadow side of the tree, shouldn't it? Yep, because the sun is coming from this direction. I'm going to take my damp brush and lift that off that I just put down. That's okay. And we're going to bring it down on this same side of the tree as the branch I just fixed. All right. Good. Now, I think some of my other branches need to be darkened a little bit. This side of them. All right, it's looking good. All right, now I think I'll also add a few brighter spots in the foliage because it looks kind of you know, just kind of brownish. We want it to be bright, a little bit more bright. So we can add some more yellow, and we can add some that aren't attached. That's fine. Some yellow on top of the orange, you know. So this is time when you can kind of do what your heart desires, right? Add a little bit more bright spots here and there. And then the orange that we made, we'll have to wet that again. A little bit more of that in there. Make it more vibrant. And then the burnt sienna, which we used for our gray, so we'll have to get some more out of the little pan here. Now you could take your brush and paint some leaves on the ground and some falling leaves, but we're going to do that with a splatter method. That's fun. I'll show you that next. So we're just going to carefully take Kleenexes or paper towels and block out our other picture. That's important. We want these leaves to be going down from the tree. They don't need to go up in the sky. So I'm just going to block the sky off a little bit and my other tree. But I do want them to go down onto the ground, so this is really all I want to block off. And I take my big brush and some juicy yellow paint. Back up a little bit, because this will also go on my glasses. And I'm going to tap the brush. Okay, let's see. Like a few more on the ground.
Hey, you got them on me.
Then we'll do some orange. I don't have much orange left. If I'm closer, that's cool. All right, that might be enough. You could add some green ones. You could add some more of the burnt sienna, but let's pull our Kleenexes back and see how that looks. Oh, kind of cool. If you want those to look more like leaves, you can. I'll show you down here on the tape. You can just push it with your, just blot it with your finger, and then that takes the dot away. It just will make it a little bit more of a odd shape. So you can lighten it up. Maybe I should have blocked out the underneath the grass. That would have been a good idea. Because that looks kind of funny to have it below the ground. But I think I'm pretty happy with that. Now with this painting, where I haven't been thinking about doing a sky, but you could, before you did that last splatter, you could take a very light wash of a blue and paint in the sky. But it's kind of tricky to do to get it behind the tree. So I just thought we would just do it without. Okay, now we're going to go back to the pine tree picture and use white paint for the snow. This is a bleed-proof white. It's a water-based paint that's opaque. And we'll put some in little cups for you. I think it's good to use your smallest brush now. And what we're trying to do is paint the kind of globs of snow that land and gather on the branches. And we'll also do some snowflakes in the sky. So this is fun. You want to it's just kind of random where you think that snow would be settling on top of those branches. And don't forget to make them kind of odd sizes and shapes. They wouldn't all be the same. And do some down the center of the trees as well, because there are branches that are coming toward you. They're not all going out to the sides. So it's just kind of a Fun thing to add the snow. However you think it would look. On the tops of the branches. And we'll do some on the little lighter trees too, but make sure you do it, kind of smaller. Just a lighter touch. One more.
Yeah, can I call you back later? Okay.
You're just teasing.
Just throwing in an extra line.
I know the silence is getting to you. And then the last thing we're going to do on this painting is take that same little brush and the white paint and just make some random spots of snow that are falling in the sky. And those can be down on the ground, snow over the snowbank as well. And they're more in the forefront, so you could make them a little bigger here if you wanted. All right. I think that one's done. And I think this one's done. So I think the next thing to do after they're dry, or even before they're dry, you can do this if you don't disturb it, is take the tape off. And we will attach them to cards. I realized after I started that I wasn't using the stock that came with the envelopes and cards, but the extra pieces that I bought, this a little bit more yellow. So yours will be more white. You know, the actual paper will be whiter. This is kind of an off-white. But that will show up better on the card, I suppose. And you want to sign your work. So we have some pens here. Okay, then so here's the card. It'll open like this. The deckled edge is in the front. So we're going to place the card on here. So we, since this is wet on the back, on the front I mean, be careful here, put a few of these strips on it. See if I can get them to peel. I'm sure you can do that yourselves. You don't need to watch me do that, but that's the idea, is to peel that and then stick it on the card. And then, of course, this one will be a vertical. It would go this way. So there you go. Fall and winter.